Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum. Namaste, everyone. On the occasion of the birth of Sri Krishna, Krishna Janmasthami, celebrated by Hindus across our world, I offer this reflection in which I focus on child violence and the meaning of Krishna's birth. The nature and circumstances of Sri Krishna's birth are narrated in the sacred text known as the Bhagavata Purana. Krishna was born into the family of Yadavas. He was the son of Vasudeva, whose father, Shurasena, was a leader of the Yadavas. His mother was Devaki, the daughter of King Ugrasena of Mathura. Devaki's father, Ugrasena, had a son whose name was Kamsa. Kamsa, the brother of Devaki, was despotic and tyrannical and cruel. When he came of age, he imprisoned his father Ugrasena, made himself the ruler of Mathura, and sought to consolidate his power by demolishing anyone perceived as a threat to his despotic rule. After the marriage of his sister Devaki to Vasudeva, Kamsa heard of a prophecy that he would be destroyed by the eighth child of Devaki and Vasudeva. He immediately sought to end his sister's life and was only prevented from doing so by the pleas of Vasudeva, who reminded him of his relationship with her and her status as newly wedded. He spared Devaki's life, but did so only after a promise that every baby would be handed over to him. Devaki and Vasudeva were imprisoned by Kamsa, and each child of the couple was mercilessly slaughtered with his own hands by Kamsa. The night of Krishna's birth was dark and stormy. Vishnu Purana describes it as one with violent winds and torrential rains. The river Yamuna broke its banks and became like an ocean. At midnight, Devaki gave birth to her eighth child, Krishna, in a dark, cold, and squalid prison. Vasudeva, aware of the danger to his son's life and directed by divine instruction, decided to protect the baby Krishna at the home of his good friends, Nanda and Yashoda, in the neighboring village of Gokul. The doors of the Mathura prison miraculously opened. Leaving Devaki asleep, Vasudeva ventured out into the raging storm. Placing the baby in a basket on his head, Vasudeva made his way to the cowherd village of Gokul, where his friends lived. The swift-flowing Yamuna river parted as he entered with Krishna. It was late at night, and the villagers were all asleep. Entering Nanda's home, Vasudeva placed his sleeping son beside Yashoda and took up Yashoda's baby girl and made his way back to the prison. There, he gently placed the girl next to Devaki. In Gokul, the cowherd villagers rejoiced and celebrated the birth of the son of Nanda and Yashoda. They named him Krishna. In this way, Krishna, the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, grew up as a playful cowherd boy in the village of Gokul as the child of Nanda and Yashoda. We celebrate Krishna's birthday each year because he is venerated by Hindus across the world as divinity in our midst. We honor him as an avatar, a divine descent, and a world teacher, Jagat Guru. His dialogue with Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra has become one of the enduring and inspirational sacred texts of the Hindu tradition. How do the circumstances of Krishna's birth speak to us today? What is the relevance in our context? Beyond the beautiful ceremonies of rocking him in cradles in our temples and homes, singing joyful lullabies, and offering him toys for play, how does his birth challenge us ethically and morally? How does it remind us of our human obligations? How does this story become an inspiration for action in our world? To answer these questions, I offer two suggestions. First, Krishna was born in circumstances of child violence. 6 of his siblings lost their lives at the hands of a violent uncle, and he was saved only because his father was able to successfully take him away from his place of birth. The violence was not limited to the family of Krishna. In his determination to harm Krishna, Kamsa ordered the slaughter of every child born within the past 10 days in the region of Mathura. The attempts on his life did not cease after he moved to Gokul, and the texts narrate a series of unsuccessful efforts to harm him. The threats and the reality of violence in Krishna's life ought to remind us of the many forms of violence against children in our own times. We must be reminded also of our moral obligations to protect children from violence. These forms of violence include trafficking, child labor, child marriage, female genital mutilation, bullying, corporal punishment, and when they are deprived of the necessary resources for physical, mental, and emotional growth. In situations of armed conflict and power struggles, as in the time of Kamsa and today in places like Syria, Yemen, and Somalia, children are victimized in multiple ways. One disturbing study by UNICEF estimates that 120 million girls under the age of 20 are sexually exploited at some stage in their lives. Boys are not exempt from such sexual violence, even though the numbers may be lower. The internet is widely abused to perpetuate new forms of child sexual exploitation and violence. As in the case of his uncle Kamsa, it is estimated that 93% of children who are sexually exploited know their abusers. The fact is that child violence did not end with Krishna's overcoming of his violent uncle. When we celebrate Krishna's birth this year and his escape from violence, let us not forget the children who at this moment experience some form of violence. In every child victim of violence, we must see the face of the child Krishna. In addition to all these forms of heartbreaking violence, Krishna's birth speaks powerfully to a specific contemporary experience of children at the United States border. Like Krishna's father, Vasudeva, many parents seeking to protect their families from violence, undertake arduous journeys, not unlike Vasudeva's journey across the raging Yamuna River to secure the lives and futures of their children. For them, the river is not the Yamuna, but the Rio Grande, and the safety they seek is not in Gokul, but in the United States. This, unfortunately, is where the similarity ends. Krishna was welcomed by the cowherd leaders and the women and men of Gokul. Gokul was an oasis of safety and a place where he could delight in play, Leela, without fear. Although he had to flee his home to save his life, he thrived in the love of his foster parents, Yashoda and Nanda. He found a new home where he was welcomed and wanted. In the case of the children of Central America and Mexico fleeing violence, dozens die each year in the treacherous Rio Grande River. If they make it safely across the Rio Grande, they face the reality of separation from their parents and confinement in cage-like prisons. It is possible that some of them will never be reunited with their parents, who are today facing the threat of COVID infection in immigration and customs enforcement detention facilities. Children do not belong in cold cages and prisons separated from the arms of loving parents. Like Krishna, they also need the warmth and security of loving homes. This point could not be clearer in the story of Krishna's birth that we celebrate today. We are told in the Bhagavata Purana that the doors of his prison miraculously opened, and the protective hand of the divine sheltered him and his father on their journey to Gokul. The divine does not sanction the imprisonment of children, but as we see, liberates and protects to ensure that the child thrives in safety and in joy and play. As we celebrate the birth of Krishna and his escape from violence, let us do so by committing ourselves to the work of freeing children from violence. This work is sacred. It is divine work. Even as the divine hands opened the door of Krishna's prison and parted the waters of the Yamuna to ease his passage, our work for the well-being of children has the blessings and the approval of the divine. Let the birthday of Krishna this year be an occasion for reminding us of our moral obligations to the children of our world. Happy Krishna Janmasthami to each one of you and your families, and especially to your children.